There's a Dungeon Master's kit?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, excuse me.
Bless you.
There we go.
I just like the song. This is the time. This is the place. And this is FC3 Monkey Business, your one-stop shop for everything geeky. And since anything is geeky, if you love it enough, you never know what you're going to get. This is your host, I am C. This week, we will be talking to the lead designer and managing editor for the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, Jeremy Crawford. After that, no, seriously.
Sorry.
After that, stick around for our upcoming events, Everyday Heroes, and our question of the week. With me, as always, perpetually, consistently, and every time we're on the air, it is the legend himself, Billy DeTore.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Billy.
He's a legend in his own mind?
He's a legend in my mind, I think.
Legend in your mind?
He's only a legend in my mind.
Okay.
Tanya Metris is also here today.
Hello.
Say hello to Tanya. Producer Sherry is on the phone.
Hello.
Hello, Producer Sherry. How
There's
are
way
you
too
today?
Much snow down there.
Good.
Yeah, and
I'm
it's
good.
And it's Angie's fault.
Yes.
And then the Lovebirds
Angie's
extraordinaire, Edwin and Dolly, are in the house today.
Hello.
For change not playing house, I see. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. It's very nice of you.
This is you too.
Who's that?
Chris is there.
Oh, hey, Chris. How you doing, buddy?
Good. Good morning.
Good to hear your voice, mate. Good to hear your voice. All right. So, jumping right into it, we have sponsor shout-outs to hit up, and then I'm going to ask everybody how you're all doing. All right. So, first of all of the usual sponsors, Knox, Selena's, First Print Comics, The Great Escape Room, Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey. This is some good stuff. These people are
good stuff.
I'm telling you, these people are amazing. We're looking forward to showing them off a little bit.
And Wibbly Wobbly is working on some new props.
Are they really?
Yes.
What do they got going?
I have
did they
not
say?
a clue. They said
haven't said?
they were painting and screwing stuff down and hammering and building.
So there's a lot of
some-
construction noises in the background. Good for
Yes.
them.
Big
Good for
time.
them. That's going to be fun to see what they've got coming. And so we got some Patreon shout-outs.
Woohoo!
We had some new Patreon subscribers in recent days. So a big shout-out to Terry Sinopoli of Arlene's Costumes. John Ashton Carton, our very own Batman. Good to see you, buddy, and good to hear from you. And James Irish, who has been following us avidly on Twitch. We just launched the Twitch channel. We did our 24-hour marathon last week. And then Beardy is his nickname, but Josh I think Coppinger, or no.
Yeah.
Is
Yes,
it Coppinger?
Coppinger.
Josh Coppinger and I have been handling the weekend shifts. I know, Edwin, you've got something in mind coming up, I think. Did you? Or no, you've got your own channel, is what it is. What's your channel?
It's
The guy in the chair.
The Guy in the Chair. And then we are Mighty Monkey _TV on Twitch. And we'll be posting a regular schedule fairly soon. Bernard Marvin's been our team captain on that. He's been keeping us organized. And so it was a lot of fun. I got to play Warcraft for the first time in ages.
And you had a visitor.
And I had to visit a cat.
Yes, a little fuzzy visitor.
Little fuzzy visitor. The cat that we are keeping for the next couple of months has claimed me as her own.
Yes.
She
was cute.
Which is great. Just great.
You don't like cats, Chris?
I'm not a huge cat fan. I don't dislike them as much as I used to when I was younger. I can enjoy them, but it's like being a grandparent. I enjoy them and know that I can then walk away from them and send them home or something along those lines. The fact that this one's been living with me for a couple of months now,
And running around the house.
when I'm trying to sleep, stuff like that. It's just taking some getting used to.
See, last night we went out to dinner with my sister and her husband and their kids. And anytime we're around, I love their kids.
Yes.
But that's exactly how I feel. I'm
See?
I'm
Like,
glad
okay,
to go
I'm
home
done.
to my cat. Thank God we have cats, Susan.
Yeah, but you're like the crazy cat family that's
yeah.
starting.
But that's
Yes.
all good. How many do you have right now?
Right now, 4.
Right now, 4.
4?
Do you want 2 more?
No.
I can put them up. How are things out in your neck of the woods, Sherry and Chris?
Not bad. It finally stopped snowing.
So you have like 12, 13 feet?
Feels like it.
We have no more room to put any snow in our yard. We really don't.
In the distance, is that Chris? No, it's a Yeti.
Yeti again?
Yeti again. Betty met a Yeti.
Where's Alana?
Lana is at Derby. Actually, she just finished up Derby, and she's heading out. She had to work today.
Oh, boy.
We miss Alana.
We do. We miss her dancing around in the production booth.
But your aim will get better.
You don't even know. You don't even know. Do we have any Apple 5-star reviews, Producer Sherry?
Not this week.
Okay. Hey, but you know what? I can do the blurb. Want to help others find the show? Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Every review will be thanked on the air, and any questions will be answered. We want this to be a conversation, so please send in your questions. We love hearing from you folks. And then Ed and Dolly are over here to my left. How you guys doing? What's been up lately?
We're doing great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Doing good? Having some fun?
Finally got my car fixed, so
Nice.
happy about that.
Yes. Yes.
My car is on the perpetual disabled list, so I understand that pain. I really do.
It's no longer a death trap.
Oh, good. That's important.
I'm not as terrified of it as was before.
Can I tell you, my mom's now even terrified for driving underneath bridges.
Oh, see?
She's like,
Sounds like my mom.
That whole mess
that
down in
whole thing.
Miami.
Oh yeah,
That's terrible.
And she's in
Terrible
Florida
stuff.
right now. But I was talking to her this morning. She goes, you know what? Now I'm like afraid to drive underneath bridges. And just I said, take another pill. Just take
Another Xanax.
Take
another
Take your
Xanax.
second anxiety med.
Oh, dear Lord. Yeah, I've never been fond of bridges myself,
Yeah.
especially when there was that bridge collapse many years ago in Minneapolis, St. Paul, over a major river gorge. That did not sit well with me.
The ones I don't like is heading from Tampa down to like Sarasota. Is
Okay.
the one you're coming over like Tampa Bay and things like that, and you're just over the water the entire time, and it was like, no.
See, I have more of a problem with tunnels.
Oh, you
Okay.
probably don't want to be locked in someplace. And if
No.
She likes there being a light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh yeah, I totally.
And it
get
not
that.
being an oncoming
and
train.
something over or something
Yeah.
open over her head.
How about you, Billy? You were good
No,
side?
I was just regarding bridges. I just don't get the card game.
Me neither.
Then there was the Don Johnson show, Nash Bridges.
Nash Bridges.
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
Todd Bridges.
Todd Bridges. I'm afraid of Todd Bridges too. I don't like going under Todd Bridges. It's just
Oh, Lord.
Do we have music to go into our next segment?
Hey!
At this point.
Different strokes for everybody.
There you go. See?
Oh,
Yes,
Lord.
I love it when Billy enables my sense of humor. I love it.
Oh,
Yes.
God help
Interesting
us.
story about Todd Bridges.
We
Do tell
learn
your
new
interesting
things
story.
about Chris every day.
One of the guys I used to game with online actually bowled with him.
Oh yeah,
Bold.
Yes.
Billy Bowles.
Bold.
I bowl. I didn't
That's
bowl with
awesome.
Todd Bridges, though. What
No.
you talking about, Willis?
Exactly. He hates that.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Mitch actually said that to him one time by accident.
And probably got a death stare for it.
No, he didn't. It
Okay.
was just like, please don't do that.
It's a little
At
old.
least he was very nice about
Well,
it, and
that's
I guess
good.
he's really funny in person.
Good.
Who would have guessed that he's the one cast member still alive from that show?
I know. Seriously, he was the one with
know?
some deep-seated problems early on, but he seems to be he's handling it.
Yes, sir.
He's doing his thing. All right. I'm so excited for this interview. I can't even tell you.
I know. You're like
The,
giddy.
the
giddy with
gaming geek in
excitement.
me is like dying for this.
It's a kid in a candy store.
It seriously is. Sherry made this happen for me.
You've
and I'm
got
really,
dice out.
I've got
and
dice out. I've got my first edition player's handbook on the table in front of me.
I have the 5th edition player's handbook
Right
in the
next to
front
we
of
got
me.
like the beginning and the
the
end.
oldest to the newest.
There you go, oldest to newest.
You guys can ask for autographs?
I wish I could.
I don't know if they can do it through the phone.
I wish I could. But all right. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to roll out, and then when we come back, Monkey Business is going to be chatting with D&D lead designer and editor Jeremy Crawford.
And for now, we'll hear from comedian Kyle Cease on old school video games.
Oh, okay.
As long as we're talking about games,
Yeah,
I figure
absolutely.
This is appropriate.
Good deal.
Oops, hold on one second. It helps if I do it right.
We are recording,
He's
right?
pushing my buttons.
Yeah, so far we are recording.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't want to replay the music. Here we go.
People have to do like corporate parties, and they're like 97 years old, and they're like, talk about World War II and crapping your pants. And I don't have jokes about either of those things because I've never been to World War II. But here's the thing. I know. I'm very funny. Here's the thing, though. We have stuff in common. Like, right off the bat, who here, like me, owned the original Nintendo? The original.
We still have them.
How great was the original Nintendo? They try to come out with their new systems, and the new systems are like, oh, look at me, I'm a new system. But the original Nintendo, I know, that's how it talks. But the original Nintendo was the best system ever because it's the only system that if it didn't work, you could fix it by blowing into it all day. Remember that? You try to do it fast first. When that didn't work, so slow. Maybe it's the cartridge, which I don't know. Yes. You know what the best part of Nintendo was? The codes. We had codes that got us to the end of the game immediately. Why can't we have that in real life? Just once I'd love to be on a date with a chick, and when she starts talking about her cats, and she's like, and this cat likes corn, and this one eats gravy, and this one had diarrhea, I can be like, up, down, left, right, BA, select star, and I'm in bed with her, no more cats.
To Dungeons & Dragons players, there are two names that we all pretty much know. It's Gary Gygax and Jeremy Crawford. Jeremy Crawford was hired by Wizards of the Coast in 2007 as a game designer. Jeremy is currently the lead designer and managing editor of the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons and is an author of many of the books. He also authors the monthly Sage Advice newsletter and is extremely active on Twitter, answering questions from players all over the world. Jeremy, thank you for your time, sir. Welcome to the show, and it is great to get a chance to meet you.
It's great to be here.
Now, we were talking about this when Sherry first brought to my attention that she had managed to land you coming to the show to have this interview. The first thing we talked about is you and Mike Merles are, in essence, the Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson of this generation. So my first question is this. Do you guys roll up stats for yourselves and have duels over who gets to be which one?
No.
Okay.
But Mike and I have been close collaborators for the full decade that I've been at Wizards of the Coast. And if anything, the two people we sometimes get compared to are Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock.
I will go with that.
Yes, with usually Mike being thought of as Captain Kirk and me as Mr. Spock.
Okay, because so you're more methodical. You've got the more logical approach, and Mike is more, hey, can I sleep with her? No, that was bad. No, that was terrible. Don't laugh at that. That was bad.
No.
Wow, that was just a shot across the bow.
What?
Definitely not.
I know.
We each take turns actually being methodical.
Okay,
and,
good.
We each take turns having sort of wild, imaginative flights. But really, the roles we play is it is sort of Mike's realm to often be thinking of wild new things, and it is my job to take those things and shape them into the products that D&D players hold in their hands.
Okay. All right. That's okay. I see that.
So you're the Mike.
I would be the Mike.
Of the convention.
Right.
thing.
And then my friend Dan, who's the president of our company, he would be the you in this equation, because my job is I come up with all the wild ideas, and then his job is to try to figure out what's feasible and how it all fits together.
Right.
Okay. So that's a good relationship I can handle. Now, how long have you been a player? Because you didn't just kind of stumble into this thinking, oh, this sounds like it'll be fun. You were a player for a long time, were you not?
Yes. So I started playing D&D back in 1st edition when I was in elementary school. My sister played it before I did, and she said, okay, you've got to try this crazy game out. And what's funny is when we first start playing it, I had no idea that there were even rules. Because one of the other kids at the school would run adventures for us. He would just describe things happening. Sometimes I think he was reading from one of the modules that was out at the time. Other times he was just making things up. And we would just make up what our characters did. We would just suddenly decide we all had magic Vorpal swords. And it was only years later that I realized, oh, there are rule books for this game.
Hey, wait a second.
that made me actually even more fascinated by the game. That there was this shared language for people all over the world to play the same storytelling game and build worlds in a way that they could understand together from one game table to the next. And so that turned into this sort of love affair I had with D&D, going all the way back to, again, elementary school and continuing to this day.
Okay.
And he's not saying what year he was in elementary school.
Well, then he's perfectly it's perfectly acceptable.
So
that was 1995, right?
Right. I was born in the 70s.
Yes.
Okay.
Same here.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
definitely young enough to play first edition.
There you go. As a matter of fact, my first brush with it was I was given the red box in '82, and then I didn't have
born in
anybody to
83.
actually play with until I got to college in '88, and that's when I found first edition. Well, it was AD&D at the time.
I didn't start until 1992.
Well, late bloomers are still acceptable to the table.
I
That's
know, well.
fine. As long as you come to the table, we don't care when.
I go through withdrawal when we don't play.
I know.
Oh,
we
God.
still have it. We still have our regular games. Now, do you get a chance to play, Jeremy? Are you so busy that you don't get that opportunity anymore?
So I have a home D&D campaign that I run. In fact, we had our most recent session just this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have made sure to keep my D&D life going outside of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually very strict about my home game never including anything that we're currently working on.
Okay.
I sort of frame my home games so that it's as much like just a person on the streets D&D game as possible.
Mm-hmm.
We only use material that's in our books or just stuff that I've made up as a DM.
Right.
As far as rules go, and then the adventures are all homebrewed, and it all takes place in my homebrew setting.
Okay.
So it gives me a chance to experience D&D the way everyone else gets to experience it.
Okay.
And I have found that I'm still just as much of a fan of the game I work on as I was years ago before it even occurred to me that it was possible for a person to have a job working on this game.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that. As a matter of fact, when was that moment that you realized you could actually make a living out of, in essence, playing D&D or working on D&D?
So I actually started out working on RPGs as a freelancer. Many years ago, I had a different career. I was working in web design. I was at California College of the Arts in San Francisco, overseeing all of the college's websites. But I started wanting to dive into this creative endeavor of writing fantasy game material and also editing fantasy game books. And so I started doing this as a freelancer. It was basically working around the clock because I would go home from my day job and then write and edit in the evenings and on the weekends. And so over about a 5-year period, working largely with the publishing house, Green Ronin Publishing, I worked on a number of books, including co-designing Blue Rose, a role-playing game for them, and built up this work and realized, wait a second, how about instead of doing this on all of my evenings and weekends, I try to make this my actual job? And it was around that time that Wizards of the Coast posted an open position. And actually, it wasn't a design position, it was an editing position. So when I was first hired on at Wizards of the Coast, I was hired as an editor.
Oh, wow, okay.
But it's important to point out that on D&D, especially back then, when we say editor, we're not talking about a copy editor. We're actually talking about a content editor, someone who brings the game material into its final form.
Oh, wow.
But that didn't last very long. After getting hired at Wizards and sort of spending the first year pinching myself, not being able to believe that this was actually a real job, getting to work on D&D full-time, my job then started to change. It went from editor to then game developer until now then designer. Now, these days, we've actually erased most of those distinctions. These days, we actually call almost all of that work just design because everyone engaged in those different roles is a part of the design of the game and of our books. But I have to say, now approaching 11 years working full-time on D&D, I still, about once a week, will have a moment where I'm like, really? Do I get to do this still? So it's really it's a magic that never really wears off.
Oh, that's great. That is great. Now, my sense of timing is a little off. When you came on board, was 4th edition still a thing, or was you starting to work towards 5th?
So when I started at Wizards, it was actually at the very end of 3.5.
Okay.
And in fact, I worked on the very last 3rd edition book, and then moved from that to working on the 4th edition Player's Handbook.
Okay.
And so then I worked on all of 4th edition, and then was one of the people who oversaw the creation of 5th edition.
Okay. Well, I have to say, for a long time, I know you've probably heard this or not, but 4th edition was not. It wasn't as popular as other editions. Am I kind of in the right ballpark with the way that was received?
Yeah.
Okay.
So 4th edition had a large audience, especially for a tabletop role-playing game.
Mm-hmm.
But for an edition of D&D, it did struggle compared to the other editions.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's been a lot of thought about why that was. But really the simplest explanation for it, and, I'm going to risk oversimplifying, was that it just didn't feel like classic D&D enough for enough people.
Okay.
And so even though there was a lot that people liked about 4th edition, it sort of was just a bit too far from the place of comfort, that sort of sweet spot where people feel like, yeah, this is what Dungeons and Dragons feels like.
Right.
I might like a bunch of things in this game, but it's just it's not quite hitting the target.
Right. And that's what we professional armchair quarterbacks, we kind of talked about amongst ourselves, those who had been playing the game for quite some time with the earlier editions. Now, I will tell you, the first moment I picked up a 5th edition Player's Handbook, and I purchased it and I brought it home and I opened it up to the first pages and I started reading those first few entries. I can be a very sentimental person, English major, theater, the works. And I read that introduction and I read some of the first openings and I'm like, I felt that vibe that I felt when I first opened up the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook. I felt that vibe,
that chill that went
that
back
chill.
through you.
Exactly. It was that feeling like, oh my God, it's like coming home almost. It really, and the further I went into the book, the more I started reading what you'd done with the classes and how everything kind of meshed together and how everything, the flavor of it. I was like, holy Moses, this he hit it. He hit it right out of the park with this stuff. I was so happy with the 5th edition.
It seems like it has streamlined some of the stuff from previous editions.
It makes it see. Here's the difference. I mean, because we have a Pathfinder game, and I'm not sure if that's a dirty word in your office or not, but we have our Pathfinder game, which is great. It offers depth and complexity for veteran players. But to put a Pathfinder game, Player's Handbook, core rules book, in a beginner's hands,
they're lost.
That's like torture.
So this is nice.
But then you give them 5th edition, and everything is easy to figure, easy to read, streamlined. It's elegant, if I may use that word, and it's just
it's got pretty pictures too.
And we've got so. Yeah,
Sorry,
I heard a rumor that there was some artwork in the book that was produced by some local artists from Western New York. So I don't know if that's true or not, or even which pieces would be able to point out to. But I was like, okay, we have a local connection. Very good. But I think if I can offer that compliment is that 5th edition really feels like the old homestead is back. And you could take that and give it, and you're sitting on this edition, and it's D&D has come mainstream. It used to be where the table of geeks in the back of the library.
Taboo.
It was, and if as soon as you identified you were playing this game, then everybody would be open for public
holy
ridicule.
water on you.
Right. I remember being treated like that when I was in college many years ago.
Wasn't
but
that many
now we've got Critical Role. And all these other podcasts that are coming up. We're planning on doing one of our own. We just started a Twitch stream recently for our company.
Great.
And all these people are talking about it. And I hear folks talking about games that they're involved in while I'm at the bookstore, just idly walking up and down.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share this anecdote with you. And this just happened recently. There's a game shop in town. It's very popular. It's out by Tanya's house in one of our suburbs. And I went and did a monthly visit. And I'm walking down the D&D aisle, and there's an older couple. I literally put them 60s or 70s at the very least, and they're looking at books. And of course, here I'm making assumptions. I made an assumption that they were probably there to buy something for somebody, like maybe get a gift for a grandkid or whatnot. But as I'm walking past, the wife looks to the husband and goes, "Can I be the wizard this time?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, absolutely."
Did you
yeah.
do a double take?
Yeah, I did a double take, and the husband's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely. I wanted to try a rogue anyway." And I'm listening to the two of them, and I'm getting the biggest kick out of it. And I'm like, I'm going to be talking to Jeremy Crawford soon. I want to tell him this story.
That's
marvelous.
Great.
So I got a big kick out of that.
And we are finding more and more that people of all ages and from all walks of life are dipping their toes into D&D. Many people thought, oh, that's a game for those other people, and people thankfully are starting to see, no, this is really a game that everyone can enjoy. Now, of course, even back in first edition, the player base was wonderfully diverse, but that fact was often invisible to people outside the D&D community. So I think really what's happening is this awareness is growing that this community is diverse and there's room for anybody who wants to engage in this high fantasy role playing to give it a try.
Absolutely. Ask a mundane question. What's your favorite class to play?
So it's a tie for me, and this has been true going all the way back to first edition. And that my two favorite classes to play are wizard and cleric, and I basically alternate between them.
Okay.
Really, the unifying theme is I love playing spellcasters. Although that said, there are times, especially when we're doing playtesting, that I'd love switching over to fighter or barbarian or rogue or any of the other classes just for a change of pace. And also, especially when I'm have my game designer hat on, to make sure I have a first-hand experience with how every class in the game functions.
Right.
But when my game designer hat is off and it's just I'm a gamer and I'm sitting down to make a character, my mind always goes first to, well, which type of wizard or cleric am I going to make this time?
Wow, he is your spirit animal type thing. You have a tendency to.
I do.
Seriously,
I stick to casters.
He sticks to casters. Right now, you have a druid wizard.
Yes, that's a long time aberration that I've played with. Even since first edition, I kind of would mix and match.
Wizard to do a third.
Well, it's usually the druid wizard, and I called him a geomancer. I had this whole Jedi-esque kind of theme to them.
Great. Yeah.
But truly, I think people have a tendency to just gravitate toward and stick with primarily like one type of class because they that's the one that they enjoy playing and things like that. I know for me, it's like usually a spellcaster like a cleric or a wizard or a sorcerer or whatever. But then like I will dip my toes back into the fighter when I just don't want to have to think and keep track of anything. I can just go and smash and hit everything and not have to worry about the storyline.
Go ahead, Sherry.
See, I'm a little more all over the place. My favorite characters are rogues, but I've wizards, druids, fighters, clerics. I'm a little more all over the place other than my love for thieves.
See, I always like being the support guy. I love being
you see what everyone else needs, and then you jump
we
in
have so many
anywhere.
min-maxers at the table more often than not, so
We've
I
got
let
too
them
many
go
people
ahead
at the table.
Yeah, well, we have a table of 8, Jeremy, and I don't know if that's. Do you find yourself with large? I mean, I always see that the modules are set for 4 to 5 characters, but then when you have these tables that are 8, 9 people, it's wow. It can be mind numbing sometimes.
Well, in my home game, I have 7 players.
Okay.
Yeah, and I often actually have larger groups. Also, when I DM at conventions, and one of the things I love about DMing 5th edition is sort of like 1st and 2nd edition. It's a little easier to have larger groups than it was in 3rd and 4th edition.
Oh yeah.
So I've even had I think 9 players might be the most I've done in 5th edition. But yeah, right now I have 7.
There was a time I played, again, back in colleges when I started learning with AD&D, and 2nd edition was just kind of starting to trickle into the horizon. But I was at an event that we had on campus where there were 2 DMs and 26 players.
Ow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was an interesting weekend. And of course there was also an equal amount of beer. So there was, because you have to play it the right way. But yeah, I've always been the support guy because I always try to fill those niches and make sure that the rest of the party is not like stepping too far across that red line and bring them back. So, all right. So you and I are both casters. So there we go. We're twins, separated by birth or something like that. What I have a couple of just regular questions, stuff that was put to me by the prep crew, my favorite producer, who's on the phone with us today. And one of them is, what do you think is your biggest success so far in regards to D&D?
So the thing that has pleased me most is it connects to something I was talking about earlier, and that is that so many people now feel like there's a place for them at the D&D table. That probably more than anything else, when I go to conventions, when I talk to people online, when people tell me their stories of, this is a game I was always interested in, but I felt like, this is for those other guys and not for me, but now I feel like I can try it. I just love that. It makes me feel so happy because then it really drives home that in addition to this being a type of entertainment, D&D is also a wonderful way to spark friendships. It's a way for people to engage with their own creative interests by telling stories and building worlds and conjuring up gods in these sometimes whole cosmoses that they create for the games that they're running. I love that I've been able to help create this environment where people can engage with this sort of friendship-making engine, this creative fire. It's very gratifying.
And like we were talking about earlier, it's how it's been going mainstream. I see all these articles talking about how gaming has affected people's lives, how it's brought folks together, as you've said. And then I see other applications where, they're reaching out to autistic children because it gives them that opportunity to kind of come out of their comfort zone in a safe place, and they can learn to problem solve and expand on social skills. It's important to me because I have a very dear friend of mine whose 7-year-old son is autistic, and so she has been asking me questions about eventually getting him into gaming, and he's looking forward to it from what I'm being told. So you got these different little microcosms all coming together under the umbrella of this one player's handbook. It's amazing to see.
Yeah. And just a few weekends ago, I was down in the Bay Area and had the privilege of getting to DM for the D&D club at my niece's school. And at the school, they have this wonderful D&D after-school program. And the teacher was telling me that playing the game has really helped a number of the kids, both socially and also with problem solving, math, reading, etc. And for me, I just got to come in and just have a ball being the DM for these wildly creative kids.
Oh, that's phenomenal. That's it. Dolly, did you have a question?
Yeah, I actually have a question as well, because we're talking about it going mainstream and it being in the mainstream media. How did you feel about seeing it on the Netflix hit Stranger Things? Like, how did you feel when you saw it there?
Totally delightful. Not only just because I love to see our game, appearing places like that, but in Stranger Things in particular, I loved it being there because those kids remind me of me and my friends, because we were about that age when we were playing. And in fact, in my current home D&D group, one of my players, my friend Andy, he and I have been playing D&D together since basically we were those kids. So it was almost like, personal for me seeing that show. So I loved it.
So how many jokes of the Demogorgon comes out in the middle of the gaming table?
So, it's funny. The Demogorgon has never actually really been a big thing for us. So,
I'd never encountered one in 30 years.
And then all of a sudden, now that's the running gag.
Yeah, that's the running gag. And your husband he has a figure. He'll bring it out once in a while too, but we never actually fight one.
No, you just threaten Tiamat or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, Demogorgon is a big deal for us in my work, because Demogorgon appeared in Out of the Abyss, one of our adventures within the last couple of years. But yeah, it's funny, as a DM going all the way back to first edition, I have never run a game with Demogorgon in it. But still, of course, seeing Demogorgon in Stranger Things is still resonant because it sparks these memories of having the first edition monster manual and seeing Demogorgon in it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You got some time for some fan questions? We were talking up that we were going to be talking to you this week, and so we had a lot of people saying, oh, hey, ask him this.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, the first one is what is your favorite character you've played in a campaign? You mentioned how you're partial to wizards and clerics, but is there one particular character who is like your go-to, this is Jeremy Crawford's guy?
Yes. My favorite character is a character I've actually played many times.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Cornelius, and he is actually this semi-divine being who keeps forgetting who he is and being reborn in different D&D worlds. And so this is the story for how I can keep remaking him as a first-level character. So what's funny,
nice. That's awesome.
What's funny is every time he reappears, he always reappears as an old man. So even though he's first level, he still looks like this wizened, wizard or cleric, and because his class changes, but he's always either a wizard or a cleric. And he also has a pet owl who, when he's a wizard, that owl is his familiar.
Uh-huh.
And actually, often in his rebirths, he and the owl switch names.
Oh, that's great.
Because this is how befuddled he is he forgets sometimes which name is his and which name is the owl. So the owl's name is Simeon, but sometimes the wizard is named Simeon and the owl is Cornelius. So it goes back and forth.
I love it. And see, that's the kind of storytelling flavor that makes the game right there for me.
It's the Doctor Who of D&D.
It is. It totally is.
It's always slightly different, but it's still kind of the core is there. That's great. What is the best campaign you have ever played, and what made it the best?
Wow. So I have to confess, I don't actually get to play D&D much because I'm almost always the DM.
Oh, okay.
But I would say in the last decade, my favorite campaign that I got to play in was Chris Perkins' 4th edition campaign. We played that at the office for pretty much the whole run of 4th edition, and it was a great time. As anyone knows who's seen Chris DM, he's a marvelous dungeon master, and it was also that campaign was a kind of crazy meat grinder in that I think by the end, every character had died at least once, except for my character. We figured out at the end of this 5-year campaign, I think my character was the only person who had managed to survive all the way from first level. But yeah, it was great. It was crazily epic. And Chris did a great job of really leveraging the superheroism that was a part especially of high-level 4th edition play.
Okay. Yeah, I've in recent, the past year or two, I've been watching a lot of Chris on YouTube and Matt Mercer. These two guys have become basically my idols in terms of being a dungeon master.
Right.
It's
well, and
go ahead. I'm sorry.
What a lot of people don't know is that Chris is also a delightful player because I'm actually his dungeon master. So Chris plays in my home D&D game, awesome. And he plays this wily rogue, and is always surprising me in good ways with the wacky stuff that his rogue does.
And I think that's one of the great things about it is Gary before you and all of the editors before you and you included have always made it very clear. This book, this player's handbook, is not set in stone. This is not cement. This is the guidelines. This is to help adjudicate your imagination, but let your imagination just roll, just go, suggest things, and then
Absolutely.
Hey, if we have to roll dice, roll dice and figure it out from there. Tanya's husband Randy has been one of our main DMs. I'm also a main DM for our table, but we both say, hey, you make a suggestion, roll the dice, see what happens. It's the best way to look at it.
I haven't had the pleasure of DMing again with you.
You have not DM'd. You have not
DM'd.
You.
Let me phrase it.
I think that needs to switch.
I have the attention span of a gnat. I can do it about 3-4 months, and then my ADD kicks in, and
I know.
I'm like, okay, I'm done.
My current campaign's about a year old, So
it's like I've DM'd, but it's really hard when you DM the Wexlers when they go two different directions.
Oh, we have a 10th alignment at our table. There's chaotic good, chaotic neutral, chaotic evil, and chaotic Wexler. It's the last name of this father-daughter combination. And
they go two different directions.
and they don't plan it, but they do it anyway. It's just
I tell you. So it's like Sherry trying to herd the cats that are in the studio.
It's terrible. Nailing Jello to a tree.
It is, Sherry. I'm sorry. But no. It's like I don't know. I just don't have like a huge grasp on all the rules and the background and things like that in order to stick with it and to do all that type of stuff. And I'm like, I'm not a big like create my home type of stuff. I would primarily use modules and things like that. But I'm just like,
well, it's a collaborative process. And when we started this campaign that I've been DMing for a year, it was our first 5th edition campaign at this table. And all of us agreed. We're like, hey, this is our first run with it.
Experience.
So even if the DM has to say, give me a second, you stop for a moment, you go to the book, you start looking for you find the information you need, you move on. It's just, everybody just communicate. That's all.
Can we give you one suggestion?
We're going to give them a suggestion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
In the next run of the printing of the books, can you make the page numbers just a little darker for us people that are old?
It is actually funny how often we actually get that request.
See? Come on.
Okay, so we're not the only ones who noticed it.
You've got beautiful, colorful pictures and everything, but just and the pages are beautiful, and I love that it has like this old parchment feel to it, but I'm sorry, I can't read the little numbers in the corners, especially in our dark basement.
That's what you get bifocals for at our age.
I do have them, but I'm going to have to put them a little darker. But that'd be my only critique, darker numbers on the pages.
I'm going to go back to the fan questions now, Tanya. Tanya Page.
I'm a fan.
That's going to be your new name at the table. Tanya Page number.
No, I'm Tanya Fabulous.
That's it. Okay. Okay, another question.
Fan questions.
When adding things to 5th edition like subclasses, monsters, items, etc., how much of the process is looking backwards to previous concepts in D&D to add what people know into the mix versus just doing something totally new?
Wow.
That's a great question.
I like that one.
So it's a mix. So we are constantly going back to previous editions to see, is there something beloved that we haven't brought forward yet? So we want to make sure we bring forward as many of the great things from previous editions as possible. But as you can imagine, because we're designers, we're always either experimenting with things in our own D&D games or just letting our imaginations play. We also have the new things we want to do. But what's interesting is even when we create a new thing, we still go back to the previous editions to see, all right, we have this idea. Has it actually been done before, but was maybe called something else? And if so, is there some inspiration we can get from the previous editions for how we implement this new thing? Is there maybe some connective tissue we can create between that old thing and the new thing so the new thing actually still feels like it's growing out of the same soil as the original thing? Because we want even our new things to feel like they're totally at home next to something that has maybe been in the game for 40 years. Because it's always important to us that D&D going forward not only feel like it's fresh, it's alive, it's constantly sprouting new things, but that it also has that wonderful feel of the game that some of us started playing, back in the 70s.
Wow. I like how a lot of the basic, like the magic items have been streamlined, so you don't have +5, +6, +29 craziness. It's +1, +2, +3.
Right.
So you can kind of like for the regular MMO players out there, you've got your green, your blue, and your purples in terms of your magic item quality. And it's helped really balance everything. When I first started opening up and looking at the math of 5th edition, I was like, "Ooh, wait, that doesn't." And then it started clicking, and I'm like, "Okay, this is really cool," and it makes everything a little bit easier to deal with. And you don't have I think one of the downfalls of 3rd edition was when you're in the epic levels. The paperwork involved was amazing, and so you're I'm +53 to hit, and but my armor class is only at 22. I mean, wait a minute, I'm just going to get clobbered. Yes, but you've got this new kind of feel to it, where everything is a little bit more balanced right down the middle, and I enjoy that. That makes it easier for me as a DM.
Oh, good to hear. And what's interesting there is we certainly had a mathematical motivation for bounding the game's numbers quite a bit in 5th edition. But I will have to say that math and game balance weren't actually our main motivators. The main motivation for us, for what we did with the numbers in 5th edition, was actually a storytelling motivation. It was important to us, particularly when looking at things like ability scores, that people could see a range of scores and have a sense of what those numbers mean in the world of D&D, that there would actually be a story associated with those numbers. Here's what I mean by this. We put a cap. We put a cap in place on ability scores of 30. And this is just one of many examples of why we did some of the math things that we did. By putting a cap in place, by saying the highest ability score anybody in the entire multiverse of Dungeons & Dragons can have is a 30, what that suddenly does is it means that all of the numbers now have meaning. Because if you can say, well, the highest score that a human can have is a 20, well, then that actually then gives you a sense of what an 18 means. That gives you a sense of what a 10 means, because you now suddenly are within a bounded field. Whereas if the numbers could just go on forever, like I could have 1,000 strength, it becomes very difficult for anyone to imagine, well, who in the real world would be somebody with an 18 intelligence when there are also people in the world with a 500 intelligence?
Yeah.
But if suddenly the highest intelligence a normal human can have is 20, you suddenly can imagine what a person in the real world would be like who has an intelligence of 18.
So it's giving those parameters to give you that relatability.
Exactly.
Awesome.
That relatability, so that, which then makes it easier for a dungeon master to role play particular monsters and NPCs. It makes it easier for players to get a sense of sort of where they are on the spectrum in terms of how strong they are, how charismatic they are. It also means that you can move on once you've maxed something out. Because the normal maximum of an ability score is 20, you will, if you play all the way to level 20, you're going to often hit that maximum, especially in your main ability score, pretty early on in your career, or at least in the midpoint of your career, which then means your character can diversify, because we also wanted characters to be a little more well-rounded, to encourage more role-playing, to be actually a bit more like full-fledged people in our experience, in our world, where we all have various interests. You know, it's actually rare to meet somebody who is good at only one thing.
Yeah.
We all have a variety of things we're interested in, that we toy around with. And so, again, we wanted to encourage characters also that are a little more well-rounded, which is another outcome of us capping the numbers.
And that fits into my personal play style. I mean, I've sat at tables where they were just pure tactics. All right, roll initiative, kill the monster, grab the loot, get the XP, move on. Kill the monster, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
Whereas you're a storyteller.
I love a storyteller. I have a game world that I've been working on myself that whenever I DM, I put my players into. I've been at it for like almost 25, 26 years myself. And I know where all the good stories are, so I want to lead the players to where those are so that they can go ahead and experience these things. And then I make this big sandbox. Yeah, then they go off in an entirely different direction, which is fine because I'm ready for that. I really.
Are you sure?
Sometimes.
Okay.
So and that's just I don't. It makes that's its accessibility factor. That's that whole thing there. Cool. Okay. Another question. Here's a nice little brass tacks kind of mechanical question. What school of magic is a ring of spell storing when it's empty?
So the magic item wouldn't then have a school of magic.
Okay.
It's empty.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought too, but I figured, just in case he had something up his sleeve, I wanted to know about it.
No. Yeah.
All right.
That's an interesting question.
I thought so. Hey, we compiled whatever was asked of us.
Yeah.
And now another one. Which class and archetype is the closest to the World of Warcraft shaman?
So the one that I would say, especially now with the release of Xanathar's Guide to Everything, that would be closest to that. Nope. Actually, it's funny. I started answering this question, and you said Shaman, and I was actually thinking of the 4th edition Shaman.
Okay.
So I was about to say, there's the Circle of the Shepherd in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which is actually related to the 4th edition Shaman.
Gotcha.
So now let me reorient my mind. World of Warcraft. I haven't thought about the World of Warcraft Shaman in a long, long time. So an elementalist.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say one great way to emulate the World of Warcraft Shaman would be with a Circle of the Moon druid who eventually gains the ability to turn into elementals, and also druids have on their spell list the ability to summon elementals.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be one way you could try to recreate that WoW class in D&D.
Very cool.
Is that one of your questions, Chris?
No,
Okay.
all these questions. Mine's coming last, but so I wanted to get the fans out first because they're my peoples. I got to take care of my
you play World
peoples.
of Warcraft.
I
so
do.
Therefore, I was...
14 years I've been playing that damn game. All right. Here's another one. Do you conserve momentum through a teleportation spell? For example, could you save yourself from falling by casting Dimension Door?
Oh, okay. I love this question. This question actually comes up at least a couple of times a year. So the rules are silent on this issue. Mm-hmm. I, as a DM, have a general philosophy of being very generous toward creative play. Mm-hmm. And I have had players before who have done this. You know, they're falling hundreds and hundreds of feet, and at the last minute, you know, they teleport over to a ledge and poof, they're safe.
Yeah.
And so the way I tend to DM it is that that momentum is basically erased by the teleportation.
Gotcha.
But that's just my call as the dungeon master. Mm-hmm. The rules are silent. And so really, if a person was very strict with themselves about running the game, by the letter of the law rather than by the spirit of the law, I would have to say because the teleportation spells don't say they stop the momentum, right? Then by sort of the letter of the law, they don't, and the person would splat on the other side of the teleportation. But again, I as a DM have always been, and not just because I'm the lead rules designer now, I've always been a sort of spirit of the law kind of dungeon master. And again, the spirit for me is reward the person who comes up with a clever way to use one of their abilities.
I'm good with that, and I'll tell you my anecdote for that is the very first time this ever became an issue was soon after the very first Star Trek reboot movie came out. And there's that scene where Kirk and Sulu they're falling, and Chekhov is trying to rescue them with the transporter, and they slam into the transporter pad, and then they get up, and they're like, okay, let's not do that. So I used that as my reference, because it finally came up about like 6 or 7 months after that movie came out, where somebody tried to save themselves with a teleport, and I'm like, well, they didn't splat at terminal velocity into the transporter pad, so I'm going to use that frame of reference from another story to basis my decision. So, respect the spirit of the laws, as you were saying.
I had a question.
Go ahead. Yeah. Ask your question.
What was the deciding factor to pull back on the haste spell?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask him about haste.
I was going to ask him about haste compared to earlier editions. Come on.
Haste is broken, okay?
Haste is broken.
It needed to be fixed.
It broke again. I was a little shocked when I opened the book first. Haste. It is a pretty powerful spell to begin with in earlier editions, and I can understand the logistics around it. But why?
Yeah, when we were working on not only haste but actually a number of traditionally very powerful spells. We had a double goal, and that was make sure that these things are still really saucy and spellcasters are going to be happy to cast them, but also rein them in any case where a spell in previous editions had gotten to the point where it was basically so powerful it was upstaging everyone else at the game table, or was grinding play to a halt as everyone got to watch the spellcaster for 10 minutes do whatever it was they were doing with their spell. And also we wanted to rein those spells in that were either so powerful or so complex they were just slowing the whole game down and making it kind of a slog for everybody at the table. So Haste got reined in because it was sort of a grandstanding spell where it's like, now we're all going to watch the spellcaster have fun for a while. Or whoever was the beneficiary of Haste. And so that is something that affected, again, a number of spells in the game where it was important to us for the spell to, again, still be exciting, but not so exciting that it was stealing the spotlight from everything else in the game.
Yeah.
And also another concern of ours is sort of then a third concern is we wanted to make it so that you never felt like you had to pick as a spellcaster certain spells that like, spell X is so good, I would be a fool for not picking it.
Yeah.
We wanted to make it so that there was always an array of choices where you had multiple good options, and to create that array of good choices, that meant we needed to pull back on the power of a few classic spells.
Yeah, I think I should have just read Haste before I took it and
Yeah,
wrote it
because you
into
took it automatically.
I just took it
and
automatically.
then you looked at it like, wait a second.
I'm like, wait.
See, for me, the big...
I was like, darn it. But I did use it last time, and it did... I'm like, I'm going to keep it in my wizard spellbook, but I did use it tactfully.
Yeah, you did go with it.
In regards to Sean's character. But I'm like, okay, now, mental note, read all the spells before you put 2 more in your spellbook.
There you go.
Yes, I did that. I did that tonight. I took Dispel Magic and Windwall.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
Now, way back in the day in first edition, I remember when the party wizard would cast Chain Lightning, we would all get up and go make a sandwich and.
We're like, okay, are we done?
Because he's going to be rolling. Okay, now you're going to be rolling. Now you're going to be rolling again. Now you're going to be rolling again. All right. So while he's doing that, we're all like 24th, 25th level. Yeah, he's going to be rolling 25 times. We'll be over here making a sandwich and ordering pizza. Okay. So, yeah. So if there's ever spells that need to be nerfed, that was definitely, that one got nicely.
Chain Lightning.
Yeah, Chain Lightning got nerfed pretty good, and it was necessary.
So thank you for clarifying the whole thing about Haste.
Sure thing.
I've got one other fan question and then one of my own. But the first one, the fan question: what happens if you eat a bag of beans?
Oh. Oh, wow. Good question.
I started laughing the moment I read it. It's not your average taco night, Tanya. It's
and I am always amazed and delighted at how often I get questions about consuming things. So
yes, I'm sure.
They must be a halfling.
or because I also get a lot of questions about what happens when, like, the druid turns into a mouse and the orc eats the mouse and then the druid returns back to his regular form. So, just there's a lot of strange eating going on in people's D&D campaigns.
I have seen it.
So the bag of beans themselves obviously don't tell us what happened. So this is going to have to, in many ways, I'm going to have to punt on this question because this is entirely up to the DM what insanity is going to happen when you eat one of these magic beans.
Maybe they turn into one of the bright pink toads. I don't know.
But yeah, there was always time where you need to basically arm the DM with, go ahead, have fun. That's just the best, basically the best way to do it.
Do you dare make me roll on the insanity chart?
Yeah. Well,
test me.
That's another thing. They had them in first edition, and then those rules disappeared, or I just didn't find it. But the miscibility of mixing and matching potions and whatnot, I when I found those rules in fifth edition, I was like, oh god, they're back, yay! Because I had people who would do that. They would drink these 5 or 6 potions before a fight, thinking, okay, everything's going to be fine. They're not realizing they're just putting a time bomb in their stomach.
Or Randy, as the DM, is like, are you imbibing it like right after the other one? We're like, oh no. We're going to wait 5 minutes.
Yes.
Like, we know better. He's like, just make that wish.
Go ahead.
So while you two were just now talking about miscability. I grabbed my Dungeon Master's Guide, which is what I always do. I always reach for the books and looked up Bag of Beans, and I was like, oh, wait, this is right. The way we wrote it, we actually hedged out the possibility of this craziness happening in your stomach because we specifically say the beans only take effect if you plant them.
Okay.
And in dirt and water them. So the DM, of course, could still, as I said before, decide something crazy happens in your belly. But the way the magic item is written, these wonderful effects only occur if you actually plant the beans.
Read the blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, because it says if you dump the bag's contents out on the ground, they explode. And then it says...
Well, that's how you get the explode.
Right.
The explosion. But then to get the other effects, you have to plant them.
Okay. So the person's safe because it hasn't been planted.
There you go.
Unless it's like an earth elemental or that you're feeding it to.
Yeah, well, again, DM gets to interpret and have some fun with that at this point.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
But we have this catchphrase. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have to say I absolutely love the fact that you grabbed your book to look that up. That's just awesome.
As soon as he said I just grabbed my DM's guide, I thrust both arms in the air. I'm like, yes! We are a catchphrase at our table, Jeremy. It's read the blah, blah, blahs, because we have people who will read just enough information on an entry to get what they want out of it, not realizing that if they had read just a couple more sentences that would have answered further questions or have denied them the way they wanted to twist something.
Or read the punctuation in the description.
The punctuation is just as important.
Yes.
So, then we have our buddy who originated the alignment of Chaotic Wexler. His first name is Evan.
It's Evantar Rulesbender.
Yeah, Evantar Rulesbender is his character name. No matter what he's playing or what he chooses, that's what we name him.
We love you, Evan.
Sure we do.
Well, and I constantly reach for my books, especially actually if we were talking about something that I wrote myself. My hand would be twitching even more than normal to reach for the books because I often will work on so many different versions of something. I can't trust that what I'm remembering is what we published, or it might have been version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4. So I always have to go to the book to make sure what's in my head matches what you're actually seeing in your D&D books.
And I think that's also, like, from the player's standpoint, we're like, well, I'm going to do blah, 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 blah. It should do this. And they're like, well, go back and read that spell. And I'm like, oh, crap, that was a 3rd edition spell.
Yeah.
Or 3.5 or whatever. I'm like, crap, it doesn't. And so I have to go back and look, especially, like, the protection from energy and how it's now
shifted a little bit.
It's now resistance to it, which is, I think, only 5 off. Whereas, like, in previous ones.
Is resistance 5 points off or half of the damage?
Oh, resistance halves the damage. It's very powerful.
Exactly. And that's good stuff.
So knowing that, whereas in previous editions it was 10 times your character level was damage that was taken off. So it's like reading that particular aspect, too, as a player.
So now we've got the core books. You have Monster Manual, DM's Guide, Player's Handbook. Now it's Xanathar's Guide to Everything has joined the clutch. Then you have your adventure books. Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, is that the one that's on the horizon now?
Yes. Yep, that comes out in May.
I'm so looking forward to that one. Xanathar's has been a riot to read. Not only does it have a lot of great information to it, but I love the little blurbs that Xanathar himself puts in, these little observations from the mind of a beholder, and they're just, I laugh. I will open the book just to look. Yeah, I will, him, with his goldfish Silgar. Just the little add-ins that he throws in for every little class, every couple of pages you see a drop in from Xanathar, and I'm just laughing my butt off reading those. So that book is brilliant.
The Tomb of Annihilation board game scares me.
Those little quotes are a delight, and those were written by a writer on our staff. His name is Matt Cernett, and his regular job is to be our lore master. He makes sure that when we say something about a place in the Forgotten Realms that we actually know what we're talking about.
Nice.
But he's also really good at sort of getting into the head of one of these prominent NPCs and writing quotes for them. So he wrote he wrote almost all of the Xanathar's quotes in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and he also wrote most of the Mordenkainen's quotes in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that very much.
Are we able to use this book in your campaign?
Mordenkainen? Or
No,
the
this
Xanathar
one.
book? Yeah, I'm comfortable enough with 5th edition now that you guys can start bringing in some other source material.
I need to borrow that.
You need to borrow that?
Yes.
You want me to bring it to your house sometime?
Yes, please.
Maybe?
Oh, come on.
Tuesday, please.
Tuesday, sure.
I don't know. I have a level in Wizards that I want to peruse for my birthday. So.
Okay. All right. The last fan question is going to come from me directly, Jeremy. As I've mentioned before in my earlier conversation, there's always this one character class that I've kind of mixed and matched to create a vibe. And I've called it the Geomancer over the years. It's part druid, part wizard. In certain rule sets, it's been a little easier than others. Like with 3rd edition, when you gave us the Mystic Thurge, it just kind of blended the whole thing together very easily. I'm noticing in 5th edition, it's a little harder to kind of fit together the way I've always wanted it to. So my thought was, and I have a buddy of mine who's one of the min-maxers, but he's good at kind of figuring out good math and whatnot.
Scott?
Is to create kind of an archetype of druid that's a little bit more involved in spellcasting than Circle of the Land. So my question, do you just off the cuff, do you have any insight for me as kind of really a good way to blend druid and wizard? His whole theory on the way of looking at things is that everything is connected. The nature and arcane and all that, it all blends together. The universe is at his disposal kind of thing. So, and lofty kind of a thing, but would you have a suggestion of how to best kind of put that together in a convincing format?
So I think Circle of the Land is a great starting point because when designing the Circle of the Land, actually the whole concept of it basically was it's the druid wizard.
Right.
And so I think, that's a great foundation for you to build on. It's going to give you a lot of spellcasting flexibility. You get a little bit of wild shape in the mix. Now, one simple tweak you could make in your home game, and so this involves going outside the rules, is if you don't want to have to rely on multi-classing to realize this character concept, you could just add some spells that are missing from the druid spell list to that list, and go on your way. Okay. Now, if you want to do it through the rules, you can certainly take a level or two in wizard. You could also, if there's just a handful of spells you want, well, not a whole handful, but maybe, just one or two you want, you can also take the Magic Initiate feat, which is a way for you to pluck some spells from other classes. So that's another thing you can use for your tinkering.
Okay.
And then I would also, when you go look at the wizard, if you do decide to go the multi-class route, look carefully at the different subclasses in the wizard. I think often people making an elementally sort of flavored spellcaster would be inclined to go evoker. Because you're throwing fireballs and whatnot, but
Tiny's favorite thing to do.
Might actually, but for the theme you're going for, you might also consider something like the Diviner, where you're getting this sort of mystical aspect where you not only are in tune with the elements, but you're seeing some of the future. You can then sort of push more into sort of the shamanic archetype. So there are, again, a number of ways you could do this. So I'm going to suggest also one other thing you consider.
Just awesome.
If you're going to go the multi-classing route, you might also consider, instead of wizard and druid, you might consider cleric and druid.
Okay.
And if you do cleric, then you could go down the route of taking something like the light cleric. Because if, let's say, really what you're fishing for are spells like Fireball, well, the light cleric is going to give you that. Light cleric has various fire-themed spells, and then you're going to gain access to the divine mystical abilities that clerics have. So you actually have a variety of ways you could build this.
Oh, my God. It's like going to the fountain of wisdom and being able to dip direct. That's amazing. Thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
My pleasure.
Because these characters always, I think I've only had a PC version of this particular character on 3 or 4 occasions over the past 25 years. But I've always had them lingering in the background of my game world. So to be able to define them, to keep them fresh and current is very important to me. So that was awesome, and I appreciate that.
What do you suggest for a beginning person, someone just coming into the game that's not really played yet, to get them started?
So, the easiest way to start is with a pre-generated character, so that basically you don't take a new person and say, before we even play, we're going to have to teach you how to make a character. I think often it's great to have a one-shot with a newbie to say, okay, here's just what D&D feels like. And it doesn't even need to be, a full 4-hour session. You could do, a 90-minute to 2-hour session, which I've run before at conventions, just a little mini dungeon crawl or some other little wilderness adventure to give somebody that initial taste. And when I'm teaching a new player, I tell them very few rules, because one of the beauties of D&D, unlike, say, a board game where you do need to teach somebody all the rules in advance so they can make informed decisions throughout the game, with D&D, you don't really need to do that. With D&D, because it's run by a person, all you need to make sure is that the person understands what a D20 is. And so when you ask them to roll a D20, they know which of those strange-looking dice to pick up and roll. They need to know sort of where to find things on their character sheet, but even that you can actually point them to while you're playing. And then otherwise, the main rule I tell them is when it's your turn, particularly in combat, just describe to me what it is you want your character to do, and I'll tell you how you do that using the rules.
Yep.
And so I've gotten brand new players up and running in 10 minutes before playing Dungeons and Dragons. They really don't need to know that many rules beforehand. Now, when they get to making their first character, we have specifically designed a few subclasses in the game for beginner players, and also even for veteran players who are in the mood for a kind of more rules-light experience. And so the 4 main examples of these sort of beginner-friendly options are the champion subclass and the fighter, the thief subclass and the rogue, the school of evocation and the wizard, and the life domain in the cleric. We designed those to sort of give you a really classic D&D experience without too much rules fuss.
That's cool.
And we find often, though, once people get their taste for D&D and they realize, oh, I love this and I want to make, characters of all sorts, they can usually figure out even the more complex subclasses pretty quickly.
Okay, my mind is properly blown. This is good stuff. This has been great. Can we call on you again sometime? Would that be cool?
Please, you can check with me, and if we have time, I love talking about D&D.
Oh, and so do I, as you can tell, because this has been one of our longer podcasts. So that's because I can keep going. But you have sage advice, and you are on Twitter, and you're loyal to your Twitter. I see that all the time. You're always talking with folks back and forth. You're very accessible.
I do the best I can. There are definitely times where it's hard for me to keep up, but I love talking with the community, and honestly, it's a form of research for me. I am always keeping an eye on what's confusing people, what's delighting people, what do people want more of.
Wonderful.
It's a way for me to stay engaged with the community and see, where might we need to go next? Not only in our next book, but 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So I view it as a very helpful sort of reciprocal relationship with the community.
Fantastic, and it shows, and I love how people respond to you. They know that you've got their interests at heart. It's not just people generating a game and hoping for the best and sending it out into the world and saying, okay, good. No, you're invested into that community, and we appreciate it from our end of the community. We really do appreciate that interaction there. There's so much more that I wanted to ask you about too. I mean, I know you met the man himself, Gary, and I wanted to ask you anecdotes about that, but I don't want to take up your entire afternoon as much as I would delight to do that.
If you'd like, I can close with just a short version of my meeting with Gary.
Oh, please, that would be great.
And also, actually, I should say, I also met Dave Arneson.
Okay.
It is funny. It is funny that I grew up in San Luis Obispo, California, which is a relatively small university town. Yet there in that town, I had the opportunity to meet both of D&D's main creators. So I'll actually start with Dave. I met Dave at the little game convention that was held at Cal Poly, which is the university there. The game convention was called PolyCon, and growing up, I went to that convention many times. It was my first experience of what a game convention could be. And one year, Dave Arneson was the special guest, and I went to a panel that he did and even nervously stood up and asked him a question. And I think it was actually about building D&D groups. And I remember to this day that the advice Dave gave me was always try to sort of have this open door to make it so that people feel welcome to try D&D out. So it's funny that is something to this day I attempt to do with the game.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And then Gary, I got to spend an entire day with.
Oh my God.
Gary Gygax was invited to come to the game store in San Luis Obispo that I worked at. The game store was called Game People Play. The store was run by the owner and me. It was just the two of us. And Gary agreed to come for the day to sign autographs and chat with people. And my wonderful job was to simply stay next to Gary and make sure he was happy.
Awesome.
So what that meant is the teenage version of me got to be there next to Gary for an entire day.
Wow.
Listening to him talk to other people, and then whenever other people weren't talking with him, I got to chat with him. I got to talk with him about the original Temple of Elemental Evil and just what it meant to play D&D. And he was this warm, sort of grandfatherly figure to me the entire day, and that has stuck with me ever since. That warmth that he shared with me, and that accessibility, this creator of this, not only a game, but really of this cultural phenomenon. And he was willing to just chit-chat with this excited, nervous kid for a whole day. And so that it's sort of, I try to pay it forward by now being accessible to people who are loving D&D today.
I got to imagine that he's getting an absolute kick out of that right now. If he's had the opportunity to, he would see that kid that he was with is now that steward who's very conscientious of how he handled the games. That's a baton you can't pass up handing that off. That's awesome. That is just phenomenal. Okay,
amazing.
Well, and I don't think either he or I would have imagined on that day that I would go on to be one of the game stewards.
It's not one of those things you could have predicted at the moment.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Anybody else? Because I've been hoarding this conversation. Tanya's jumped in, and I know Dolly had a question. Did I miss anybody? Chris, Sherry?
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say how really appreciative I am of where you're taking the game and how much care you have for it. I haven't played in about 20 years, and we just started playing 5th edition with Chris, and I am beyond thrilled. Just absolutely thrilled.
Wonderful.
So, needless to say, we're all hooked.
Thank you for saying so.
Just hearing the stories and how much you care about it, I'm over here tearing up.
We are a sentimental lot over here.
Yes, we're very emotional. Half of us are water signs.
Wonderful.
Jeremy, thank you. I appreciate your time. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up at this point, and I don't want to take any more of your afternoon. I am grateful that you had the ability to hang out with us. We are definitely going to be a big follower of your work, and we're looking forward to Morgan Canaan's in May, and this has been Jeremy Crawford.
And if he wants to actually become a player, you'll be more than happy to DM him in Rochester, but he's got to come to us.
Yes, I would be stuttering the entire time, but I would definitely be happy to.
If you want to play.
If we could ever get you to Rochester, we're a bit tight for our 2018 show coming up in June, but we would love to have you at the Flower City Comic Con. Come up and just do a talk, and we can play games and have a good old afternoon, good old weekend. But we'll Go ahead.
Yeah, let me know for a future one. I might be able to make it.
That would be phenomenal. That would be absolutely. I mean, you'd see me turn into a 12-year-old kid all over again.
You're a 12-year-old kid today.
He's not that far from it right now.
Well, that's part of my charms. 47 going on 14 on a regular basis.
April 27th and 28th of 2019 is our 2019 dates.
Okay, so hopefully we can see you in April of next year. Maybe we'll have a talk, see if we can work that out.
Please email me.
Absolutely, and thank you. I will not be able to say thank you enough for your time today. And
It has
been great talking with you, and we wish you the best. And I've always wanted to. I have to say this: roll initiative.
With my luck, I'll get a 1.
That's my job. That's my job.
So will he. Thank you. Have a nice afternoon.
Have a great rest of the weekend, Jeremy. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, that happened.
So concluding that interview with Jeremy Crawford, we're going to be taking a quick break and coming back with our events that are going to be coming up.
We got some stuff to wrap up this particular podcast for the day.
For the week.
I'm going to go breathe in a paper bag for a few moments.
Hyperventilate, yes. So we'll be back in a moment.
Reptilicus is silly, but he really illustrates the great array of monsters all over the place. Not just in Japan, but across the planet. An A to Z gamut or gargantuan panoply.
Example, please.
Well, name a land.
Belize.
Oh, geez, easy peasy. Mesa maze. See, in the Yucatan, you can meet El Cadejo. In Belize, they believe in him. They're not afraid to say so.
Scotland.
Nessie's living up in a lot.
How about Poland?
Scary crow named Babai.
So it's not just Godzilla?
Well, duh, Crow. There's a lot that could kill you.
Hey.
Tom. Sorry, Crow.
Okay.
Rose.
Joe.
Yo, Jonah, how's the chorus go?
Every country has a monster they're afraid of in their nation.
Every monster has a country, yeah, a station they call their home.
Gunter, Gleben, Glauchen, Groben.
What turned the musteer's guts to spaghetti?
Was it in Tibet?
Yep.
And then he met a Yeti.
Australia.
There drop bears will impale ya.
Then they'll sell you hella touristy paraphernalia.
Chupacabras chewing up cattle down in Mexico. Del Geets, Horns Gorin, battling in Navajo. Congo's Congamado is a Mongo flying dino. I know I don't want to die, but when I do, he'll be the guy.
Whoa! So, Crow,
Servo,
ready to go?
Start slow.
Cropemon is a monster from Luxembourg.
Who's actually the size of Luxembourg.
He crushed the whole country of Luxembourg.
Because he's the size of Luxembourg! Egypt's got mummies like Tutankhamun.
We're back.
I am so stuck. I don't think my heart rate has gone down 100, below 120 yet.
No.
Oh, that was great.
That was great.
That was awesome.
And I can't wait to have him on the phone again.
What a freaking class act.
Can we just bring him to Rochester at
Love
this
this.
point?
I want to.
Yes.
Absolutely want to.
Dungeon has a dragon.
Yeah, there it is. And Jeremy Crawford probably wrote it.
With Chris Frank.
On the floor.
Breathing with a paper bag. Oh, my God.
Breathe, Christopher, breathe. Okay.
Find my center.
We have some events coming up.
We do.
Okay.
FC3 board game night coming up
Woohoo!
April 4th at 7 o'clock at the Knox Event Room at Village Gate Mall.
We're just going to hang out and have some fun and
Play some
play
board games
No
and chill.
prizes, no nothing, that type of thing.
Just basically getting
hang
together
out.
and hanging out with each other.
We will have our raffle tickets for sale,
yeah.
and tickets for the convention that
Yep.
night.
I may even bring my PH and DMG and see if I can strike up a game.
Yeah,
Because I don't DM enough games right now.
No, I was planning on bringing the smaller portion of Talisman.
Oh,
you
yeah,
said
that would
you were
work.
going to be in the corner with Talisman.
I could do Talisman. That would be cool.
Our Patreon James wants to play.
Oh, I'm in.
He's played a different version of it, but he hasn't played the second edition
Oh,
version of Talisman.
Very good.
So I'm not bringing all the expansions.
So that will be April 4th at 7 at the Knox Event Room, again, Village Gate Mall, the FC3 board game night. Come hang out with us. On April 14th and 15th, is Toricon at RIT. We will be there. We'll have a table there, so we'll be able to talk up the show and hang out with all you Toricon folks. Looking forward to that. That'll be our first time at Toricon. And now we have some everyday heroes. In past episodes of Monkey Business, we have highlighted nurses, EMTs, and firefighters that have been nominated as personal heroes. This week, we are expanding that list to include teachers. The woman who was nominated this week by several people is an amazing special education teacher who truly cares about her students. This week's Everyday Heroes shout-out goes to our very own, my co-host and one of my best friends, Tanya Metris.
Oh, I needed that.
Thank you, Tanya, for being our hero, my hero. And remember, not all heroes wear capes.
Because I don't want to be sucked into
no capes.
No capes.
No capes.
You're my hero, Tanya.
Oh, thank you, Dolly. You guys are all my heroes.
She has to put up with us. That's heroic.
Exactly.
Tanya.
Yes, honey.
I nominated you.
Yay!
I seconded
you.
it. I did.
I love you both.
Yay.
I love Sherry's socks today.
Sherry has otter socks today.
Yes, they're Valentine's ones. I bought them for her.
Aw.
Love you like no otter.
Yay. How cute. That is so stinking cute.
I have my
All
Nike
right, and our question of the week. Billy.
Yes, sir.
What cartoon or animated character from your childhood is the most memorable to you, and why?
Ooh, that's almost during that whole podcast. What makes me happy this week? What makes me? And then that's not the question.
What cartoon character makes
Plot
you happy
twist.
from your childhood?
Cartoon character. Underdog.
Underdog. Oh, I remember that one. He was awesome.
Yes.
That just shows I'm old.
Well, no.
When you
shows
said
you have
that-
taste, too.
When you said that was the first character I thought of was Underdog. Although Bugs Bunny and all the Looney Tunes characters. I grew up watching all those. But when you said cartoon character, Underdog was the first one in my head. So
there goes the dynamite right
There you
there.
go.
How about you, Tanya?
Oh my God, there's so many to pick from. I'm like kind of looking back to
First one that pops in your head.
cartoons of the 80s. Well,
All right, how about you, Dolly?
I'm like looking at. I'm like, the first thing that popped up here were the Smurfs, and you know what? That's one of the ones I did like, but it was Gem and the Holograms. That was 90s, wasn't it?
I loved Gem and the Holograms.
Wasn't that 90s?
Qualifies. You were a child then.
I mean,
Was
Gem
that
and the Holograms.
was that the '80s version of Josie and the Pussycats?
Pretty
yes.
much.
Okay.
And,
Pretty
and
much.
the other one I absolutely loved, Thundercats.
There you go. There it is.
Thundercats.
Thundercats.
And He-Man.
Edwin wanted to be a Thundercat.
She-Ra, yes. So I can't. And then Justice League.
And Justice League, see? The Super Friends.
Super Friends, yeah. I was
I
Wonder
loved
Woman
that.
and
That's
the
me.
Invisible Jet.
That was because I played it right like Billy did. The first thing that popped
and
into
the
my
Wonder
head, as soon as I
Twins.
read the question, the Super Friends popped into my head.
Was it Snarf?
Yeah, me too.
Snarf the Thundercats.
Thundercats.
Yeah.
Who was the monkey on? with
Gleek.
Gleek. Thank you, Billy. So,
Although I remember when it comes to Super Friends, I mean, everybody thinks about the Wonder Twins, but I still remember Marvin and Wendy.
And Wonder Dog.
And Wonder Dog. Yeah, those are my guys. Sherry, how about you? You crafted the question, so were you thinking of something when you did?
No, but the first thing that I thought of when I just stopped to think about it was, and this is much older than the 80s, I was a huge Chilly Willy the Penguin fan.
Oh, very cool.
Walter Lantz.
Yep.
There was just something very sweet and very gentle, and that was the one that everybody associated me with. If I got to choose what cartoon we were watching, it was Chilly Willy.
There you go. How about you, Chris?
Well, it was Super Friends as well, but specifically Green Lantern.
There you go.
Because of his imagination and the power he could wield by his imagination.
I was just watching the Ryan Reynolds version of Green Lantern
it's
last
not
night.
as bad as people think.
It's not great,
good,
but it was definitely not as bad as it's been panned
It
out
was
to
fine.
lately. It got the job done.
To give you a little background, Green Lantern was one of my dad's favorites.
Oh, okay.
And I have a Green Lantern figurine above my desk at work that was on my dad's 60th birthday cake.
All right. Okay, so there's a connection there, and that's an emotional connection. I like that. That works
very much.
Dolly, you're next.
I loved Muppet Babies.
Muppet Babies.
Muppet Babies.
That's
and
amazing.
then there was also like Flintstone Kids.
Okay.
With Captain Caveman.
Captain Caveman!
Somebody,
he's right there.
Somebody spoke about that on
Love
my
him.
Facebook earlier, and I'm like, oh my God, I loved Captain Caveman.
There it is. All right, last but not least, Mr. Edwin.
Me being an anime fan, but I would have to say that mine would have to be the G.I. Joes.
Okay. Real American hero.
Yeah, I love G.I. Joe.
I used to have the,
And now you know.
I used to have the little figurines, and it was kind of funny because me and Dolly were actually talking about, like, you know, what Toy Story movie we liked.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that she liked the first one, and I said that I liked the third one, especially, like, close to the ends. Spoilers, by the way. When he gives his toys
away
to the little girl, and then that kind of connected with me when I gave my G.I. Joes, my Transformers to my little nephew.
Okay.
Like, you know, that part right there.
Listen to
really,
those emotional connections we have with these characters. That's amazing. See, for me, my favorite animated character is Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender and his crew. You know, Katara and Sokka, or her brother, and whatnot. So when I think of my favorite animated characters, I think of that particular group. But from my childhood, it's got to be the Super Friends.
Yeah.
That's going all the way back.
I loved Miss Piggy.
Oh, it's because she was just as
she was sassy and she didn't take anyone's crap, and I'm like, yeah, get it.
Oh,
and speaking of Airbender, you know they're actually coming out with a new season now.
A new season. Is it? They're making it into a comic book, aren't they?
Oh, they already have it into a manga.
Oh, okay.
But
it's not going to be an animated actual like television show kind of a thing.
Oh yeah, they had it on TV for a while, and then they stopped it for, I think it was like, can't remember now, a couple years, and now they're gonna bring it back again.
Oh, that's good to my attention. What's that, Chair?
Is it Korra that's coming back?
No, they're going
This is
to
Airbender.
the next Adventures of Aang.
Yeah, like they didn't really go into details. They just said that they're bringing back the Airbender.
Oh my!
So it could be.
That has my attention.
Something on the horizon to look forward to.
That's exciting.
Oh, anything else for today?
Can I quickly bring up one thing?
Yes, you may.
FC3, Mighty Monkey Business related.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I don't think we've mentioned it, but if you regularly buy things on Amazon, you can go to AmazonSmile.com, and from there you can pick a charity or an organization where a small percentage of your purchase will go to that charity or organization, and Mighty Monkey is one of those. Or if you have another favorite charity, sure. But I've set mine to Mighty Monkey, and this is what was going to make me happy this week, is that I want a copy of Justice League on Blu-ray, and I have mine set to Mighty Monkey, and because until the end of March, normally get triple.
Triple? Is
Instead
it
of half of 1% of the purchase price, you get 1.5% of the purchase price. Monkey. So buy now with one click on Justice League.
He's doing it now.
Look at that.
And
Billy, that's awesome.
I'm not sure how much.
50
it says
cents?
I made a difference. I think something like 37 cents. But
hey,
we'll
little
take
bit
every
helps.
37 cents that we can get.
So you got something.
Thank you.
And I get Justice League on Blu-ray.
Billy, you're awesome.
That's phenomenal.
Yes,
You're my everyday hero,
I
Billy.
totally forgot about that.
Yeah, see, I was so
I don't
wrapped
use
up in
Amazon
today's
as
interview
much.
that I just had no idea what I was doing half the time. That's amazing. So thank you for that. This interview made me happy. That's the if we're going to do that, that was amazing. That was just amazing. So I'm going to go breathe in a paper bag for a little while, and then get ready for this afternoon. Yeah, and so wish everybody well. That's a wrap for the day. This has been great. So as soon as you're ready, Billy, I'll start talking over it. There it is. And this has been Monkey Business, a product of the Mighty Monkey Corporation, purveyors and producers of the Flower City Comic-Con, coming at you June 9th and 10th of 2018 at the Rochester Riverside Convention Center. Follow us on Facebook, love us on Facebook, follow us on Patreon, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Twitch, follow us on Apple 5-star reviews, the whole works. You can follow us anywhere, and we will lead you to some really good entertainment. You have a great rest of the day.